try to ask me real, incisive questions, rather than just giving me shit that's difficult to rhyme with. Sometimes people do that. Yeah, I see question 1 just there.
I thought this was an incredible show, and I was thinking that even it would be appropriate for some school systems to get the kids to really pay attention. But my question is, when you're talking about homosexuality, even though the genes were dispersed with the relatives, the primary people themselves are a genetic dead end. And so, do you have any comments about that?
Well, I mean, that's sort of the point I was making, is that if pure homosexuality means you don't reproduce, and here's a purely factual statement: no homosexual intercourse has ever caused a pregnancy, ever in the history of biology. You know, that's not controversial. And if you find it controversial, then you don't really know what it means to get pregnant or have intercourse. So, you know, there's nothing pejorative about saying it's wrong or it's unnatural or it's some kind of negative behavior in that, but there is an interesting sort of quandary there, because it appears that homosexuality in humans it seems to like actually show up in a very standardized percentage of the population around the world, cross-culturally. Somewhere like 5 to 7% is homosexual in every culture. And because of the twin studies, it suggests that it's being maintained somehow genetically. But if it's true that no homosexual sex produces a pregnancy, you get this quandary. So when you say a genetic dead end, you know, that's technically true, although, you know, so are lots of things. So are condoms. And nobody's feeling like condoms are this horrible pejorative or whatever. So, you know, I was just trying to approach it from a logical perspective and not really put any kind of judgment over whether it's better to be a genetic dead end or better to be someone that has dozens of babies. I don't really think there's a huge like moral quality to those two things. They're going to depend on context, and lots of people choose not to have kids because they're so into their profession or whatever. That's also a genetic dead end. So that's really what I was trying to do with that. And I just think it's one of those really interesting questions that biologists have something to say about that virtually nobody else has anything to say about when it comes to the question of origins. That's why I respect evolutionary theory, because it makes predictions and finds ways to test them. No other version of what homosexuality is really has that ability. Question 2 right there.
So I love the show, and although it's really persuasive about like so much about behaviour is about making sure that we pass our genes on, aside from the homosexual heterosexual, just talking about heterosexuals.
And even the homosexual one was about ways that could help pass the genes on in sort of unexpected or unobvious ways.
Right. But it seems to me, from looking at my family, looking at my friends, that pretty much everyone actually passes their gene on. Certainly, all the heterosexuals I know do get shacked up, do have kids. So what I want to know is there a statistic on that? Like, what is the minority of people that don't actually end up passing their genes on, if you know?
I couldn't give you a statistic overall on average, but I can tell you this: it's very different for males than females, and has been throughout history. In fact, when they do genetic tests on the chromosome variation in the Y chromosome, which tells you how many male ancestors we've had on average, and you do DNA tests on mitochondrial DNA, which tells you how many female ancestors we've had throughout history on average, it turns out we've had approximately twice as many female ancestors as male ancestors. And that means males on average have been either evolutionary dead ends because they failed to reproduce, or they've been evolutionarily very successful. And from genetics, what they've actually calculated is that about 80% of females throughout history reproduced in some sense or another, but only about 40% of males reproduce. And that simple fact, I think, reveals lots of things about the difference between male and female behavior. It suggests that males will be more competitive and more pugnacious and more aggressive because the stakes are much higher in terms of whether you're reproducing or not. And it's the sort of Genghis Khan phenomenon. You know, Genghis Khan is the ancestor of like 14% of Asia right now. That's not the case for any female ever in history. You know, so that's one factor. And then once you set that aside, who's reproducing and who's not, you know, they've done interesting studies of fitness or reproductive success in Scandinavia, questioning the degree to which your education influences it. And it turns out for each next few years of university or of high school that you do, you actually end up with a few extra grandkids over the last century. And that's just basically because having a good education correlates strongly with having a good profession and therefore being a good marriage prospect. And so that, you know, a lot of people have paranoia about, you know, all the people with PhDs don't have babies, and all the people that live in trailer parks are having dozens, so therefore in the future we're all going to be idiots or whatever. But when you actually do sort of demographic level studies, it turns out not to be the case. It turns out that intelligence correlates very well with reproductive success, because it's not just about having kids, it's about having great grandkids, right? It's about your genetic legacy overall. So, you know, those are the two things I've read that are sort of relevant to the question. Final question right here.
Just wondering, so that this could be broadcast sort of worldwide to our youth, to global youth.
Okay.
Is there a way to do like YouTube mass?
Is there a way to force them to listen to the show? Is your real question.
Well, I think they'd really like it. I have 3 teenagers. I was sitting here thinking they ought to be sitting here.
Yeah, well, you know, it's easier.
Repeat the question, please.
Sorry, the question was, how do we get teenagers to watch this or find a way to broadcast it to bring it to a younger demographic? Because the average age in the room right now is a little depressing when it comes to you know, influencing future generations. That was once again just a technical rather than a pejorative statement. But you know, it's a good point, and it's, you know, teenagers don't have discretionary income that they're spending on theater as much as they're spending on other things. There are videos on YouTube. We have a grant from the Wellcome Trust in the UK to make rap music videos based on the show, and 4 of them are now released on this website, and they're sort of like a cross between an Eminem video and a David Attenborough nature documentary, and the lyrics are printed below the video, and then you can use the lyrics to sort of, with hyperlinks with definitions of the different terms being used. And I've also performed it in some high schools and colleges as well. So, you know, that's part of the initiative, but my general philosophy is it's very difficult to be educational if you're not first entertaining. So, you know, that's what makes something really get across and people take an interest in it. That's why it's important to me to do the show at places like festivals and off-Broadway runs and performing arts centers, and then that, you know, creates a buzz around it that can then translate into it being used in schools at all as well, although obviously that's a big part of my agenda. You can tell by the amount of information packed into the show. That's about trying to teach evolution and raise awareness about it. So, you know, YouTube, and also just like if you know people who are science educators or have teenagers or whatever, spread the word. That's the necessary element in cultural evolution. Thank you for your questions. To close us out for the night, I want to try to explain how an evolutionary rap song gets written in the first place. Now, early drafts of the lyrics, they're really simplistic. They sound like this at first. Yo, yo, the origin of species. Ain't no feces, dog, believe me. What? That's all I can think of. So then I'm like, oh my god, these lyrics really need to be rewritten. And sometimes people ask me, okay, well, how does the show get written? Like this. Performance, feedback, revision. And how do I generally develop my lyricism? Like this. Performance, feedback, revision. And how do human beings ever learn to do anything? Like this. Performance, feedback, revision. And evolution is really just kind of an algorithm that goes like this. Performance, feedback, revision. So the genetic code of every living creature was also written like this. Performance, feedback, revision. See, the genes are like a text with 100,000 pages, and the revisions occur in the little random changes that come from mutations. And then when they see the light, well, that's the performance. They call that the phenotype. And natural selection, well, that's the feedback side. That's about who survives and whose genes catch rise in the next generation. Yes, what I'm saying is that a rap performance like this is the best illustration for the way that descent with modification works. Because the performance is necessary to change the words, to decide which have an impact and which to send back to the drawing board. In fact, I just did that when you guys failed to react. Because any line can change, and the mutations occur when I improvise on stage. Because up until this moment, everything I said was off the page. But now it's time for me to switch it. I'll do a freestyle section. I'll try to keep it specific so I can beat your cheater to catch it. Alright, this is improv, hip-hop. I'm really glad I have this job instead of having to dishwash. But we still got a problem. The kids are all watching MTV. I'm standing here in a theater with like 150 empty seats. What the fuck? I don't think the kids would think this show is boring, but I don't think we should strap them down either like Clockwork Orange. I think we need to find a happy medium. This is me being devious. I do want more people in my house.
You can call that greediness if you want, but that's okay. I'm like, I want to be as big as Ice Cube. So I guess I'm gonna have to rap in some high schools after this, when we take this stuff on tour. Hope you guys are just really perplexed and engaged and not bored. Because all I got is a bunch of eyes staring at me, where my goal is to kick some freestyles and make you people very happy. Yeah, that's right, I'm busting it well. I can tell by your accent, ma'am, first questioner was a Southern belle. I think I'm probably gonna have to take the show down to that region. And maybe show them what it sounds like to be a rat even. Yeah, this is the way that I go. It's mad challenging. You can tell that freestyles are probably mentally unbalancing, but that's okay. Even if I make a mistake over the rhythm, this is how I introduce randomness into the system, right? This is the way that I'm mutating. It's like a quick blend. You have a real concern. People might be evolutionary dead ends. Okay, but that's okay, because I like the questions. And if you don't mate with her, then you're gonna be a dead end. See, that's the way that it works. I'm just playing with this verse. Indeed, I'm just trying to give some funk on the beat and kick a freestyle about fecundity. Yeah, I'm multi-syllabic, always killing it. See, this is my concept. This here is my system. It goes like this: performance, feedback, revision. And if you guys want to know about evolution, this here is the definition. It's simple. It goes performance, feedback, revision. And anybody here can use this concept to learn how to do anything. So say it with me: performance, feedback, revision. Memorize it. Performance, feedback, revision. Say it one more time. Performance, feedback, revision. You got it.